Um, I'm the chairman of the upstate chapter of the Republican Liberty Caucus. We started just a few months ago, so we're less than a year old. We have nearly 30 members at this point. I also was just selected as the chapter leader of the John Birch Society, where we're up to about the same amount, 30 members. And I have a passion specifically for liberty, and I'll be honest to say that it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I didn't really understand what liberty was. So what I want to do is give you a brief history about me, talk about some of the things I've done locally, and then give you sort of an overview of what I'd like to do in the next few years here in South Carolina. I'm originally from the state of Kansas. I'm from western Kansas. Grew up on a farm. Was on that farm for about 18 years. We grew wheat and milo. We didn't have enough water for corn. I grew up in a family where if you were in a McDonald's, that was about as much money as you're going to pay when you go to a restaurant. So we were very frugal. I was interested in sports growing up, played basketball. I was a three-point shooter. Thought I was going to play for the Kansas Jayhawks. Never got recruited by Roy Williams at the time, and he transferred to North Carolina. But growing up, I was actually, I'm going to give you the whole history, sort of the whole broad history of me so you understand where I'm coming from. I was raised in a Democrat family. Now, fiscally responsible Democrats, but Democrats. And we were the 1%ers of Scott County, Kansas. And so being raised in a Democrat family, you automatically, are attuned to the beliefs of the Democrats. Although I think in high school I didn't know really what the difference was between a Democrat and Republican. The government school system doesn't do a really great job. I thought the Republicans were pretty much the same. And we're all fiscally responsible in western Kansas, out in the farmlands. And so there's a little bit difference between the Democrats and Republicans. But what I found out later in life is when you move to the bigger city, like when I moved to Cincinnati, there's a huge difference between the Democrats of Cincinnati and the Democrats of western Kansas. And so as you move to bigger population areas, you understand, the theft that goes on with government. And so it really opened my mind when I moved to Cincinnati. But I'll go back to my upbringing in Kansas. I was an Eagle Scout. I participated in Boy Scouts all my life. My dad was Cub Scout leader, Boy Scout leader. I think my father was the first in the state of Kansas to earn the God of Country badge when he was growing up, so he was very well known within the Scout family. My mother came from a family that had done really good in business. They owned the Cowboy Apparel store in Garden City for a number of years. And they sold that when her father passed away. They owned the sporting goods store, and so it came from this. On her side of the family, she had the mindset of entrepreneurship, and my dad was a farmer, which you sort of are an entrepreneur. Although farmers don't call themselves entrepreneurs, they pretty much are, because you're on your own a lot of times. So when it comes to the operations of your business. I joined. I did not get selected to go to Kansas Boys State when I was a junior in high school. I was an alternate, and the lady that was our psychologist, or sort of in charge, but she was put in charge of the Kansas Boys State program, which is a government leadership program. She called a local bank and she said, "You really need this guy to go to. We really want this kid to go to Manhattan, Kansas, where Kansas State University is, so he can participate in this government camp." And so she must have had some. I'd been running a mobile disc jockey business. I'd been an entrepreneur. I hadn't been too involved in politics at all, really. But she saw that there was a need for me to go there, and luckily the bank put up the funds to where I could go to the leadership camp. I was selected as the state senator at the camp, and I continued to be a counselor at that camp for 5 years. After graduating from high school, I went to school at Washburn University in Topeka, Kansas. Our famous graduate is Bob Dole, and graduated from there in 3 years. One of my favorite parts about going to that college was I had the opportunity to go to Cambridge University for a month during the summer of 2004, and I studied international politics. And when you go to Cambridge University, during the summertime, people from all over the world go to the college. There's multiple colleges that are at Cambridge University, but people from all over the world come in. So for the first time in my life, I'm having discussions with people from all around the world about politics. And but what I was seeing from a lot of the data that the professor was giving, they were really harping on the idea that America's going to destroy the world due to pollution. They had the graphs where it was, China's at this level, Brazil's at this level, and then America is clear up here. But of course, you look at the graphs too. When it came to United Nations donations, it was everybody's at a small level, and then you had America, donating the most money to the United Nations. After that month I had at Cambridge, I thought, maybe it's time for me to get out of politics. I felt like I had a little too much of it, and I kind of built this trust where I think there's good people all around the world. So the worry I used to have about things falling apart, I don't necessarily know if I had that, if I had that strong idea that things were going to fall apart. By the time I was a Democrat, I helped, Kathleen Sebelius. I was at one of her first meetings before she became governor in Topeka. I was with the Kansas Farmers Union. My dad was a farmer. He's like, you got to go to this meeting. So I met her at one of the first meetings. And so I spent a lot of time listening to Democrats. I was a fan of Howard Dean. I thought he was really energizing the youth. And of course, when you don't know any better, it's exciting to be a Howard Dean supporter. It really is. And so, but I really wasn't participating in politics. I was more so listening. And then one day after the Howard Dean speech on Washburn University's campus, I go back to my apartment, and I think this is what really college is about, is having those conversations with other students, those long late night conversations. And I'm thinking to myself, I argued with my friends that farmers deserve farm subsidies. And James wouldn't believe me if
I'm not believing.
I've come a long ways. But they argued against me, and one of my friends, his dad was actually a farmer, and he was arguing against farm subsidies. And I was like, well, how can you argue against farm subsidies? If you don't get them, that could hurt your farm. You could close your farm. And he's like, this isn't right, though. You're stealing money from other people when you get those farm subsidies. So then one of the friends involved in that conversation, there's two of my friends, and then one of them convinces me to read Atlas Shrugged. And of course, as an entrepreneur myself, I fall in love with the book. I don't even read the whole thing right away, because I can't get, I love it, but it's just a long book. But the first few chapters, I understand. I'm like, Ayn Rand is the only one who understands, what the entrepreneurs are going through. And I crave for other people that had, the same line of thought that she had, because I was already witnessing those things. My wife was a really good tennis player at Washburn University. She was the #1 tennis player there for 2 years. Wanted to play Division I tennis. We had a choice between Nacogdoches, Texas, or Cincinnati. Luckily, I'm glad we went to Cincinnati, because it turned out to be a really good experience for both of us. I say it's lucky. Nacogdoches, Texas, it's a rural Texas, so maybe that would have been a lot like what I was used to. But I was really thrown into the world of socialism/communism in Cincinnati. You realize when you read the newspaper, a new business would open up. Oh, that's exciting! These entrepreneurs must have got together and they got bank funding. And you read the last paragraph of the article, and it's all government funding. And here I am. I'm a budding entrepreneur. I'm like, well, I want money too. So I developed this concept. It was called NAV Tracks. I was going to do college planning for students all over Ohio, all over Kentucky. and I was going to help guide them in the right direction, to pick the right college, and to even help them during college to where they would be successful, hopefully, after college. Because at that time, we knew we were in a recession. A lot of us did. I mean, the recession's been going on for a long time, and it was difficult to get a job. I mean, I had my college degree, and the only thing I could really get were sales jobs at the time. Which, sales jobs are great when it comes to money, but you don't get to spend any time at home a lot of times when you do those sales jobs. So I think at one point I would rather had the salary job, and I just wasn't able to get the something that was more steady for my wife and I. And but she continued to go to school. She got her master's degree in education. And I worked at Fifth Third Bank, which was my real eye-opening experience, because at Fifth Third Bank, they were good friends with Fannie Mae. I was told when I showed up at Fannie Mae, or at Fifth Third Bank, that Fannie Mae was not even part of the government anymore. It was totally a different organization, not aligned with the government. But when I was leaving Fifth Third Bank in 2008, and I left there as a top salesperson at the time in that department, I left, and there's so much immorality with what was going on. I remember one of the managers saying, this is great. The financial crisis is going to happen, and Fannie Mae and the government's going to have no choice but to bail out Fifth Third Bank, and we're going to make so much money. That was really the mindset. That was before the bailout happened. I left. I didn't believe the guy. I said, no way is that going to happen. Americans will throw up their arms and go, hey, this is not what I want. They'll go to Washington D.C. and stop it, but that's not what happened. And you just see this. I knew what was right at the time. And then I started watching a little bit of Glenn Beck on Fox. I started watching, just really keeping up with libertarianism, because I now believe that the government shouldn't be involved in banking. So I started agreeing with the libertarian philosophy when it came to banking. And so slowly, and how much time do I have, just so I know? Am I doing okay?
2 more minutes.
Really? I didn't know I was going to start the whole, okay.
You can talk as long as you want, but at 8 o'clock.
Wait a minute.
8 o'clock right here, okay.
8 o'clock bedtime.
Okay. So I started, I was curious. I'm like, well, heck, I believed that I was a Democrat for a long time. I still hadn't switched from Republican. My wife was raised in a Democrat family in New Mexico. Everybody from her town is a Democrat, mostly. I mean, there's very few Republicans. We even went to watch Barack Obama to his final speech in 2007. They were in Cincinnati. Yeah. Well, yeah, and to be honest to you, it was I was going there as a witness to what was going on. I really wasn't. People were asking me, who are you going to vote for, John McCain or Barack Obama? Well, at the time, I didn't think the Iraq War should go on any longer. I was completely done with it, and I was just like, I don't like either one. And I hadn't really studied what the third option was or the fourth option or anything. I was so busy with working, because I was trying to provide for my wife while she went to school full time. I didn't have time to study it. And at the bank, when you're working in the banking system, they don't allow you to search many websites on the internet. So you're pretty much closed off from all the information that's out there. But anyways, so after seeing Barack Obama's speeches, you could just tell how people really were believing everything. They were believers. We had the whole UC football stadium, the University of Cincinnati football stadium was probably not completely full, but mostly full both times. And you could just tell the ideas of the people were aligned with Barack Obama. Now, he was lying about mostly everything he said, as we find out now. And so a lot of those people, who knows where they are now? I mean, hopefully they're not believing everything he says at this point. But anyways, did some research. I joined the Libertarian Party. I thought this is the way to go. The Republicans are too far off from what I believe, and then you got the Democrats way far off from what I believe. And so I joined the Libertarian Party. And then after a while, I thought, the Libertarian Party doesn't have really anything. They didn't have very strong meetings in Cincinnati, so I decided, well, it's time to join. Maybe I can consider joining the Republican Party. And then I was like, well, the Republican Party, there's just not really a lot going on either, so it just didn't excite me much. I was too busy trying to make ends meet. And so I really focused on my NavTrax business, my college planning business, the next couple of years. And then my father was diagnosed with melanoma cancer, and we didn't know it at the time, but he had like 2.5 months to live at that moment, and I'd spent the last few years of my life totally distant from my father because of life. I mean, that's what happens when you go off to college and you go off to work. I mean, you're a long ways away from home. And I started doing a lot of research on the internet because I was like, my mom had passed away when I was 13. She had neurosarcoidosis. So I'd grown my whole life going to hospitals, watching her get pharmaceutical drugs, seen her go through the side effects. It was so hard on a family. In fact, I don't know if the drugs didn't kill her, in a worse way and quicker way than her actual disease would have killed her had she not been given the pharmaceutical drugs. So it was, but we're a Christian family. We understand what's going to happen after this life. So, we always had that faith, and it works. I mean, it really helps you get through those tough times. So, anyways. My friend in Cincinnati, he told me a long time ago, I was working in baking, he said, we moved here from California to Cincinnati because my mother-in-law had cancer. So my friend's mother-in-law had cancer at the time, stage 4 cancer. He said she refused every treatment there was, all chemo treatments, whatever the doctors want to say, and she just used the old-fashioned treatment of eating apricot seeds. And I said, at the time he sat right next to me in banking, I'm like, I'm glad it worked. I don't believe that the apricot seeds helped. My dad, we knew he's so far, nothing was really going to help him, but my dad had the choice to take chemo the last few weeks of his life. I thought, no way is my dad going to take chemo. We're going to actually enjoy the last few weeks, or try our best to enjoy it. Chemo would not allow you to enjoy it. After witnessing what my mom went through. So I did a lot of research, and I found out that apricot seeds, when you chew on them, an oil goes into your stomach from the apricot seeds, which the cancer thinks is sugar. So when you have cancer, you don't want to eat sugar because that speeds up the cancer. But the oil goes to the stomach, and then that actually can kill part of the cancer or all of it. Who knows? But a lot of people believe it's worked on them. So what did I do first when I was in Kansas City? Because that's where the KU Cancer Treatment Center was. I went to the nearest natural food store. I was like, they're going to be selling apricot seeds. I went there and they're like, we can't sell apricot seeds. It's illegal. And I said, well, why is it illegal? They're like, well, the government, 1970s or so, said we can't sell apricot seeds. So what did I do? I went on the internet, did some research. I had apricot seeds shipped from Canada overnight from an organic farm in some part of Canada. And I did more research. I found in the 1970s they made it illegal to sell apricot seeds because like one person supposedly had an overdose and died of apricot seeds, which I'm sure can happen. But with telling somebody that they can't take something for their body is where's the freedom in that, to be honest? So I've done lots of research on alternative therapies. And I've looked at what my parents have gone through, and I go, I'm thinking to myself all the time, what if they would have had the opportunity to take these alternative treatments? Maybe my parents were still here today. But I don't look at through the lens of my life. I don't look at, I'm not down about it. I just think, this happens for a reason. This happens because, maybe I'm supposed to be a speaker an advocate for all those who want access to those treatments, and they can't get those because the government's stopping them. There's a clinic in Tulsa, Oklahoma, just a few weeks ago, shut down by the feds because they were doing the apricot seed treatment. Which, if you research it, they actually can derive the oil through probably a machine, and they can actually inject it into somebody to treat them for the cancer. And the feds shut it down. And so, who's the enemy at this point? So, I've been told not to mention his name when I talk, but I will anyway. Ron Paul had a lot of YouTube videos on the internet. And the reason I'm told not to mention to him because there is some issue with his foreign policy amongst a lot of people. But when it comes to his principles and his beliefs on liberty, I agree with him 100%. I haven't found anything I disagree with him on liberty. And I think Thomas Jefferson would agree with him nearly 100%. I'm not sure. We can't call Thomas Jefferson to see, but in reality, I had no idea what liberty was until I read Liberty Defined by Ron Paul. I had just moved to South Carolina. My wife was excited for me to get back to work full time. She knew I was going to take a while because my dad just passed away, so she knew it was going to take a while for me to get back on my feet. But all of a sudden, I read Ron Paul's book. I do a lot of research on the internet. I don't want to work. I work some, but I don't want to work. I'm ready to fight the government.
But not work.
Which is work. Fighting the government is work. And I met James Clifton along the way. I met Carol along the way. Probably the first day I was sign waving, I think I probably met Carol. But we started doing all these sign waves. We started doing all these meetings, and man, there's just so much excitement. We're going to get rid of the evil in government. And now constantly throughout the process, you're watching the media. How can the media be this much against us? It didn't matter if it was Fox News or MSNBC or CNN. They did not want Ron Paul to talk. They gave Ron Paul 89 seconds at the debate here at Wofford College. It boggled my mind and it upset me, but it only made me and others work harder, for the cause of liberty. And so here I am today. I'm getting more and more involved in the local arena. I was really just involved. I was trying to figure things out for a long time. It doesn't take, when you've had so many years of government schooling, it takes a number of years to kind of mellow. After you learn it, you got to mellow out and be like, well, maybe I shouldn't be thinking tomorrow I need to march to Washington, D.C. and hold up a sign. You got to mellow out and go, hey, how am I going to do this effectively? How am I going to make changes in the government? And you do it through leadership. You do it through working with individuals that have maybe not completely the same beliefs as you, but very similar beliefs as you. And you slowly make changes. I've gone to county council meetings. I've spoken on behalf of property rights. When Ron Paul used to say property rights are essential to liberty, I didn't understand what he said. But after lots and lots of studying, without property rights, we have no right to our life. And I believe 7 county council members do not understand that point. When it comes to liberty, I believe everybody has a right to liberty. Whether or not they're Americans or if they live in another country, I think everybody has God-given rights to liberty. And pretty much means that they can do whatever they want as long as they are not harming other people. And some people go, oh, well, that means you don't want regulations, which you want all chaos and everything. No, court systems can take care of things when there's regulations. I recently, you can read one of the second article, or the first article that's in that set of papers I gave you. My business recently lost over 90% of its income due to Dodd-Frank. And it didn't happen when Dodd-Frank was put into place. All these regulations keep coming in. So January 1st, 2013, my gross income for my business went from about $27,000 and now it's down to about $1,500 a month. So I've had to lay off people, and it's been it really upset me for a while. And then there's been other things too that have happened with but it really upset me for a while. But then I'm looking at this as a learning opportunity. I've been able to spread the message about what happened to me. I've got other lines of business going strong again, so I can now I have to worry. I may have to. Still, I'm working full time in my business nonstop, but I hope I can participate in politics almost full time by this time next year, or mostly full time. Maybe not full time, but mostly full time. So basically, that's you can see on there some of the books I've read. I believe, the Ron Paul people always talk about there being a revolution. The revolution is happening everywhere. The revolution is happening amongst people who are upset at the government school system. The revolution is happening for those who don't like to eat Monsanto products, and they're revolutionizing. They're going, hey, well, we're going to come up with applications where you can actually tell if it's a Monsanto product before you buy it. So the revolution is happening in every aspect of our lives, and with it is coming a lot more friendships. I think some of the best friends I've ever made are part of this revolution, and believe me, it's we don't know this for a fact, but I think it's going to be a peaceful revolution. We're not going to have to march in Washington D.C. with guns. We're not going to have to, we're not going to have to do that stuff. It's about changing the ideas of the people. It's about telling people the truth, and slowly people identify what the truth is for themselves, but you can't force feed people the truth. But more and more there's becoming more outlets for people to get the truth. How many people here are on the internet on a daily basis? And it's okay if you aren't. It's okay if you aren't. Okay. Well, for a lot of times to get the really sort of revolutionary news, I believe, within the liberty movement, you can only get it on the internet. Well, now you can get it through magazines. This has been out for a while, but the New American, you can learn so much through the New American about things you never hear elsewhere. The mainstream media does not want this magazine out in front of people, I can tell you that. There's a CD getting ready to come out in a few weeks where people are going to be able to subscribe to a Freedom CD every month. It's going to come in their mailbox. They'll be able to put that into their car, and they'll be able to listen to a Freedom CD that's been made specifically for them. There may already be a CD out there like that, but slowly, nearly everybody's going to have access to these. It's going to be easy to access these sorts of information, and due to it being the information age, it's just a matter of time before the ideas amongst people change, and it's frustrating. I've had many conversations with Carol. Like, I'm tired of this. I can't believe, you can tell people everything. They won't change their minds on what they believe in, and I'm at the point where I just let it go, and you just got to keep moving on to the next one. Just like you do in business, you move on. If somebody doesn't want to buy your product, even though you know it's a good product for them, you're going to move on to the next customer and gladly present the product to the next customer. And so, future ambition for me, I'm going to run for House Representative against Eddie Talon. When it comes to his ideas from his voting record, I don't know him personally. He's a super nice guy. He's really well liked in my community. I just don't think he understands the ideas of liberty. I think he's far away from the ideas that I believe are the truth and that are right. And so, hopefully throughout this process, maybe he can be convinced on which direction our state should be going toward. And we have a lot of other representatives like him that need the same help. And some of them aren't going to want to learn. They're not going to take the opportunity to learn. This nullified Obamacare thing. It's obvious to me we need to nullify Obamacare in the state of South Carolina, and right now the Senate's dragging their feet on it. And what can you do? I mean, we can't replace them tomorrow. We have to wait till the next election to replace them. So a lot of us do make phone calls, quite a few phone calls throughout the week. I'm sure a lot of you do too. Send out a lot of emails. A lot of us are doing tweets about our representatives. So I'm sure some of them see those things. And so we're just constantly applying pressure to our representatives. And who knows, maybe they won't want to run again, because it used to be the only thing you had to worry about was the newspaper or the local TV. Well, now if you do something wrong, it's all over the internet. You do your best to expose them, huh? It's so easy. Anybody can expose them. Suddenly you're working outside of your home. You don't think you're anybody. You think you're just, I'm playing around on my computer. And all of a sudden, you've exposed somebody, and you've changed the ideas of the people of the state of South Carolina. We had the college president of the Methodist college here, Spartanburg Methodist. They required their students to write letters, and it was spelled out in a letter. They required their students to write letters to their state representatives asking for more state government money. It was a requirement. It wasn't even, it was mandatory. The paper said mandatory. I go up there with my video camera. Stephen Long does the interview with me. I put it on YouTube. And pretty soon the president of the college is commenting on the video, and she's going, and she's digging herself in a hole. And we expose it the next day on a newspaper article. We don't have access. Who knows if it got really published in a real website, but we had it posted online. And I think things changed amongst colleges in South Carolina. They now know not to do a mandatory requirement for their students to come in and write a letter requesting money from the government. And you can just imagine how wrong that is. I mean, forcing your students to come in and ask the government for more money and of course they said it wasn't mandatory afterwards, but it was mandatory. The letter said that, and they were never told it was not mandatory.
Is it on CNN 7?
Oh yeah, it was on local news.
Okay.
So I don't know what the repercussions of it were for the president. To some people, they probably thought it wasn't that big of a deal, but this is slowly exposing the communist mindset, to be honest, of people within our local communities and within the state. I brought some material. If you want to learn about the John Birch Society, you're welcome to. I've also been told not to tell people I'm the chapter leader of the John Birch Society. It's not good for my political career. I've done research on the John Birch Society. They were not a racist hate group. They've never been. In fact, if you look at the history of what they did, they exposed what was going to happen in the future. And right now, it's exactly what they were talking about is actually happening. When it comes to the civil rights movement, they weren't racist because they were against the Civil Rights Act. They supported the civil rights movement. They were against the communist part of the Civil Rights Act. And everybody, if you do some thinking on the Civil Rights Act, there was a communist piece to the Civil Rights Act, and that's what the John Birch Society was against. So not only do I have to defend myself as a past, a Ron Paul supporter and a past Democrat, and it's just, but I'm just telling you, you can change the ideas of anyone. It takes some time, but if you can get them to read, if you can get them to watch videos, it only takes time. The information will make the changes. They'll start making changes as they see the information.
What do you see as the direction that the Liberty Caucus is going to take? It appears to me to be somewhat similar to the Christian Coalition, which had a different approach.
Okay.
And it became a major part of the Republican Party. Our national committeeman was basically from the Christian Coalition. They had much to say about the county chairman, the delegates to the National Convention, and so forth. And really, they made the Republican Party the majority party in this state. Do you see it as assisting the conservative movement, enlarging it, and influencing the Republican Party, or do you see it as staying outside and spreading the conservative votes?
Spreading conservative votes in a bad way? Maybe spreading the conservative votes in a bad way or in a good way?
No, what I mean is,
Spreading
if you have a Libertarian candidate
Okay.
and a Republican candidate, and let's say a Christian Coalition candidate, those groups which oppose the principles Democratic Party
Right.
will find themselves split.
Right.
And then with respect to the Christian Coalition, of course, they never did put out candidates of their own.
Right.
They obtained enormous influence within the Republican Party. We're quite welcome there.
Okay. Well, as far as the Republican Liberty Caucus goes, it's especially within South Carolina, it's a very strong organization. it's already had major influence in the Republican Party. We built a lot of bridges that we didn't have because of the Republican Liberty Caucus. A lot of us who saw what happened to Ron Paul at the Republican National Convention were wondering whether or not we should stay in the Republican Party. And
Rand Paul is there.
yeah, Rand Paul said it. Yeah, and there's still some people who haven't come back into the Republican Party, but a lot of people saw what happened, and what they did, the Republican National Convention, was frightening, and it was wrong. And you have all these, and those of us who are young, you wonder which direction is the best direction for you yourself. Should we start another party, like a Liberty Party of some sort, or go on to the Constitution Party, or But yeah, thankfully for Rand Paul, I think that helped a lot of people make the decision to stay within the Republican Party. As Ronald Reagan said, the libertarian is, I don't believe I know exactly what he said, but the libertarian philosophy, he said, is basically the backbone of the Republican Party. And if you watch his speeches from before he was president, I mean, that guy was a person of libertarian philosophy. Of course, he made mistakes when he was the president, and I don't know, the reasons for a lot of them, but he turned out to be one of our best presidents, and he was able to be a peacemaker too, that most leaders have a hard time doing. I mean, he made the. I'll give you. I was talking to a friend of mine from Kansas just yesterday, and we're talking about conflict resolution. And this is something people really struggle with, and we've seen within the Republican Liberty Caucus how much we've struggled. Some of our members have, and they want to. People sometimes want to scream and yell and act mad, but the best leaders are those. If you have a conflict with somebody, you give it a day break or 2 days break. Call that person you have the conflict with, and get it settled. And I think that's what we saw with Ronald Reagan and Mr. Gorbachev. I believe it was Mr. Gorbachev, if I remember right. He actually took the time to meet with somebody who was supposed to be an enemy. After a couple of county council meetings, I thought that Jeff Wharton was sort of like the guy I'm not supposed to talk to. Not the guy. The guy I'm not supposed to associate myself with, or somebody who wouldn't even carry on a conversation with me. I sent him an email right after a speech I gave about property rights, and he said, "Well, since you're a member of the community, I will meet with you and talk to you about anything that has to do with the county." Of course, I'm not sure if he was looking forward to the meeting, but I had him. I think I probably helped him understand where I was coming from. I'm sure I did. I helped him understand where I was coming from, and I actually said, I was asking, well, why are we doing all these? Why do we do this resolution where we're asking people to turn their cars off in the parking lot? Who's asking us to do that? Well, he wouldn't tell me who's asked him to do that. But he said a lot of it has to do with the environment, because apparently if our air quality levels go up so much, then BMW can't build a bigger plant. And so I told him, I said, we should just nullify the FDA. We're nullifying Obamacare, just nullify the FDA. Which we can. Or EPA, sorry, FDA. FDA is the one we need to nullify too. We're going to get rid of that. But the EPA, and we could do that in South Carolina. We have the ability to. And I'll tell you, the main organization that's put this nullify Obamacare thing together has been, they've been a huge part in the writing of the bills is the John Birch Society. There's such a large support through that group, and you're able to get the help you need to write these bills. Right now we have Shane Martin. He's trying to nullify Agenda 21, which pretty much gives us property rights. Then we don't have to argue with our county council members anymore what property rights are, because we just nullified Agenda 21 strategies at the state level. Oh, we may have to argue with them for some time, but once we help people understand what property rights are, and it's not easy to teach people, it takes some time, but there's going to be plenty of opportunity in the near future to teach people what property rights are and what liberty is all about too. So, did I answer your question? The Christian Coalition and Republican Liberty Caucus. Nobody from the Christian Coalition has reached out to me, but I'm sure there's plenty that can be worked on together. I've never had anybody here in Spartanburg, South Carolina ask me or tell me that they're part of the Christian Coalition to ask me to a meeting, or so I haven't been part of the efforts of the Christian Coalition. So
They're a major part of the Republican Party now.
okay. Yeah, I have a friend in Texas who talked to me a long time about the Christian Coalition, and they've done a lot of things when I think the first George Bush was president. He was talking to me about. So.
I want to do a strange analogy to get you to understand something, I think. Ants that run around the ground, they're very industrious. The Bible talks about them, okay? But if you could suppose that ants can build a house, their own little ant house, right? And they do a really wonderful thing when they're building that ant house. But if somebody comes along with a big boot, stomp it to the ground. What I'm saying is, as far as getting things done in South Carolina or the nation, there's some internal mechanisms that stop you from making advances. Let me give you an example. If the House of Representatives in our country comes up with a bill that they want to pass to help the country, the Senate gets that bill, and you got a guy like Harry Reid, they're not going to talk about it. It isn't going to happen. It doesn't matter how beneficial it is to the country. If the Senate and people like Harry Reid get that piece of legislation or whatever, they just stick it off to the side, and it doesn't happen. The same thing happens in the state of South Carolina. When a House of Representatives in South Carolina tries to do something, once it hits the Senate or vice versa, whoever's in the leadership position can put it down and stop it. Appointments to committees, people who can work within a committee. If you're not on the most favored status, within the Senate or the House, you're not going to get appointed to a committee that works on judicial reform or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
In order to get things done,
we got to remove some.
Those ants can build the greatest house in the world. It just takes one person around and stomp it.
Right.
And that's the good old boy system,
Right.
buddy buddy system, and the back room system.
Right.
We got rid of Jake Knox.
That system's slowly going away. That we don't know when it's going to go away, but it will go away as long as we keep the internet free. I mean, the worst thing that could happen is if the internet became really regulated by the government, which we see that they are trying to do that at the federal level. How many people here have called? Who's the guy stopping a nullified Obamacare right now? Leatherman. How many people have called his wife's insurance agency to ask her? She'll tell her husband to nullify Obamacare. How many? How many people? How many of you heard about people going around his neighborhood and handing out flyers? I mean, that's happening. And so it's going to be pretty hard to be Mr. Leatherman at this point. As much as he's probably getting some sort of benefit by stopping Obamacare, he's probably pretty miserable with all the negative attention he's getting from people. And so there are ways to stop it, but we need a few hundred more people to go around his neighborhood. We need a few hundred more people to go to South Carolina's capital each time we go down there.
A few 100,000, did you say?
That could help. I mean, and that just tells you what's our population here in Spartanburg?
A little less than 300,000.
300,000. How many people do you think we brought in for the nullified Obamacare events?
300.
300 each time. So what if we brought 500 just from Spartanburg? What if we loaded up the buses, brought 500 from Spartanburg? We got the nullified Obamacare bill passed through the House. Spartanburg alone could stop Obamacare. I really could. If you show up with a few thousand.
You went to the meetings though, right?
Which ones?
The nullified Obamacare. You went to the
I've been
hearings?
to a lot of them.
You go to the hearings though, they put them on in a room this big.
Right.
So if you brought 10,000 people down there, you can only get this many people.
It would make an impression though.
And the news would come out that you had 5 people there.
But it's not just about showing up too. It's about, as we're learning, it's about making the calls the next day. It's about building relationships with these people. Our our county councilman, chairman, Jeff Horton called Obamacare the Unaffordable Health Care Act, I think 2 county council meetings ago. Well, he wasn't for nullifying Obamacare, but he pretty much said that Obamacare is going to bankrupt the county. So if your business is going to get being bankrupted, and it's going to be bankrupted due to unfair and unjust things the government does, aren't you going to try to stop the government? So to me, I really question, the thinking of some of our local representatives, and maybe locally. I know your group does a really good job fighting things locally, and maybe that's where we need to focus our energy. We have Nick Lane. He's the new chairman of the local Spartanburg Republican Party. We've got Robbie Bowen and Pamela Satterfield and who am I forgetting here?
Artie?
Bill Connolly, Case Chumley. The Liberty Movement is taking over specific areas of all over the United States, but we're doing really well here in Spartanburg, and it's because if every county was like Spartanburg across the state, this would be a state that believed mostly in the libertarian philosophy. It wouldn't be all the way over the libertarian philosophy, but there's quite a large population size here in Spartanburg that of the liberty movement. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have 2 questions.
Okay.
You say that you live at House 33?
House 33 district, yeah.
Like, where exactly do you live?
Stone Village Court, just off Old Petrie Drive.
What area?
Right, Spartanburg Athletic Club. Spartanburg Country Club.
On the west side.
East side. Spartanburg Country Club.
Oh, Spartanburg Country Club,
Mhm.
okay.
Country Club Drive.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Second question is, what was the impetus for you and your wife to come to Spartanburg?
She wanted to be a head tennis coach.
So where is
Funny.
she at this?
Converse College.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. She'd done what a lot of other people did. They believed in the government school system. They thought, oh, there's going to be plenty of science teaching jobs. So that was her dream. She was going to be like her mom, who was a science teacher, or is a science teacher still. And so she started, she got her master's in education. She found out that they wouldn't even interview her because since she had a master's in education, they were going to have to pay her a couple $1,000 more because she had her master's. So schools did not even want to interview her for a job because they didn't want to add that to their budget. And so not only that, there were only like 4 science teaching positions open in the whole city of Cincinnati that summer. So this actually happened right when my father was passing away, and I really look for signs. My dad's favorite restaurant his whole life was Denny's restaurant, and she told me about visiting Spartanburg, and I looked at the website and there's Denny's restaurant. I'm like, maybe this is a sign. And to be honest, we'd been through so many cold winters in Cincinnati. I was ready to move south. I didn't care. Some people in the north were like, oh, it's different down there in the south. And I'm like, warmer weather, I'm going to give it a shot. So, but I've been changed. I have a different perspective on Lincoln than I did growing up in Kansas and living in Ohio. You'll see one of my favorite books is Lincoln Unmasked by Thomas De Lorenzo. The government schools, man, oh man, I mean, we got to get these kids out of government schools. This is terrible what's going on.
In the school, the schools are like the media, I guess.
Right.
Because they're teaching them.
But keep in mind, here's the problem with the Liberty Movement, just so you know. 5 minutes. Okay. We have trouble, a lot of us are young, we have trouble raising money. We can barely scrounge up a couple $100 for signs or $100 for signs. I went to a church I hadn't been to. I went to a church on Sunday, just a small congregation. They show how much money they raise every week. And I'm just like, just imagine if we had the same amount of people, because we do have the same amount of people in the Republican Liberty Caucus, just imagine if we were able to raise this amount of money every week and actually spend it on liberty, type of activities. And we just can't raise hardly any money. I mean, that's just, and James, he's barely making it. He's I don't know if he wanted me to tell you that, but he works his tail off. I mean, he comes home from work and goes to these political meetings, and he's always asking me, how he can how I can help them, come up with business ideas and everything. And to be honest, it's just so hard in business. I just recommend people try to stay out of whatever the government's involved in, and which is hard to do. The government is nearly involved in everything. And it really is involved in everything, but there's still probably a few niches where you don't have to worry about the government closing your business.
We were talking earlier, maybe something she's gonna say about Common Core
Common Core.
and the education system.
Oh, I-
Familiar with that?
Well, I say that let me tell you about Navtrex real quick. I know I just have a few minutes. Navtrex is my college planning business. We never got it off the ground. We had a summer session where we brought kids in for a camp, but I studied a lot of Common Core. And so I read the government things, and that's really where I was at a loss of what in the heck is going on in our schools. And that's another reason I liked Ron Paul when it came to the federal education department. He wanted to get rid of it. We
So
should
did
be able,
Reagan, but it never happened.
yeah. So we should be able to control our curriculum at the state level, and with homeschooling, we can things are really changing fast. But anyways, with the Navtrex, what I found out was once I got involved in the community and I spoke to the YMCA, I'm like, I want to teach some of the kids at the YMCA, how to plan for college, how to get through college. Because I got through in 3 years, I thought maybe I could teach the kids something. Well, hey, you should go for these government grants. Hey, do you know how we can get these illegal students into college? If you come up with connections, this is what YMCA representative. If you come up with the colleges, if you get the connections for us to send these kids who aren't actually citizens, if you find the connections and help them get to college, we'll help you out. That's a reality of business today.
Absolutely.
I have forever been a Republican. I always thought of myself as a Republican. I don't think of myself as a Republican anymore. Primarily because the Republican Party, during the last election, all they really wanted from me was money. They didn't want my ideas. They didn't want my thoughts. They didn't want me standing on the side of the curb with a sign. They wanted my money. And when I sent them my money, they gave it to NBC and CBS and ABC and all of the places that I can't stand. And I have begun to vote with my money as much as anything else. I'll give you an example. When Jeff Horton voted to increase the taxes, I took all of my insurance away from his insurance company.
For you. That's how it starts.
I'm telling you, your money speaks much louder than your voice ever will. And it is sad that the Republican Party has come to this, that's where it is. And I'm just sad about that.
The Democrat Party used to be conservative in the South, and they went to the Republican Party, and where we gonna go now?
I know.
Well, I give to individual candidates, but I do not give to the national party.
But if you wanted signs, if you would call me and tell me what you want made, I'm all in for signs, but I'm gonna buy them.
Okay.
I'll pay for them, and you'll get them, but you won't buy from somebody that I don't want.
Okay. Absolutely. And it's not a bad idea to come up with maybe a list of businesses that have liberty
Absolutely.
or liberty-minded business owners. I'd love to have that list if there was a list.
I gotta ask a sideways question. Well, is there a technical reason why we can't have politicians to sign a pledge? If you come up with a platform that says the Republican Party in South Carolina or whatever supports this. So in order to be
We do have pledges. The Republican Party does not do that for a number of very good reasons. Because the party is not a platform, understand that. But any Republican can disagree with any part of the platform. And the party's been that way for 150 years. We are in freedom, we're independent people. Wilbur Norquist of the tax group, we're tax-free. Does have a pledge, and many Republicans have signed it, very few Democrats signed it, that they will not raise taxes. Grow, and this pledge, Grow Northwest pledge became national news when you had to fight over the fiscal cliff. The reason you had to fight over the fiscal cliff was so many Republicans had signed this tax pledge that they would not raise taxes, that they prohibited the House of Representatives from making any deal with Obama, and they had, the sequester and all that other kind of stuff before it. The idea of the pledge is perfectly all right, and what it's up, but it will never be, in my opinion, the Republican Party's position that would lock people in our party to a particular position because we are the party of freedom.
The problem I see is like, you see what's happening in South Carolina, we are strangled down by rhinos. You've heard the term, rhinos. So you got these politicians that stand up and tell you anything.
Take care of that.
Tell you anything till they get in office.
They're looking for a job, they're not looking.
The Tea Party is exposing.
We got Lee Bryant. And we fight for him, and Shane Martin and Lee Bryant are everything we want. All we gotta do is make sure Charleston County does the same thing.
We shouldn't forget, I'll go ahead then. We shouldn't forget that all of our representatives here in South Carolina and senators and our governor too, they make an oath to God to follow the U.S. Constitution. And so we shouldn't forget, why should we have to sign a pledge when they're actually making an oath to God? I mean, when you make an oath to God about your marriage, that's something that you should take really seriously. And we should be very careful around those who take an oath to the Constitution. They don't take that very seriously. So.
May I add something to this, please? The Bible says that the Lord said, seed time and harvest shall always be. There's always going to be on earth a seed time and harvest. And then in another passage he says, whatsoever you sow, you're going to reap. So that is what's going to come up.
I was just making a point
Whether good or evil, it's going to come up.
that the
We
Tea
don't want
Party,
that crop, but that's what's coming.
one of the things that the Tea Party does is try to expose people who are not following the Constitution or the fiscal conservative or whatever. They're like Jake Knox. There was a big push to get rid of him, and we were able to do it.
The more the Tea Party gets persecuted, the higher it rises in the esteem of everybody, and the higher it rises in power.
I think you're right.
And they're getting persecuted right now.
Do you have a closing comment?
No, thank you for asking me to be here. I really have enjoyed this, and I'll try to be back here soon. So thank you.
The last Tuesday every month, essentially, except Christmas, New Year's, whatever.
Okay.
Did everybody sign